All right. Well, we are just looking at a minute past noon, so I'd like to jump into things and get started. First of all, thank you for joining me today. I'm excited to get into things here. This is something I've been looking forward to starting, and what better time than jumping into 2021 after an interesting 2020? So, the idea of what we're looking at today is that there are different trends, different behaviors, different things that we need to pay attention to at this point. Because as marketers, really our job is to pay attention to human psychology. And that depends upon the technologies that affect us today, the different policies that govern our lives, whether that is from government itself through the technologies that we use day to day, or simply what is feasible to us to actually accomplish and experience as marketers and as consumers. And so we're going to look at those trends, make some predictions, share some opinions about what is going on in the world of advertising, in digital privacy, in social media, and some emerging technologies like AR and VR, augmented reality, virtual reality, the voice assistants that are out there, like with Google, with Alexa, with so on. Uh, then taking a step back and looking at consumer behavior and some of the trends that we see there, and pulling in diversity and inclusion and what that means within marketing today. So as we go, we'll go through each of these categories. We'll talk about some of the key moments that have happened, the key trends, the key things that we're seeing, and I'll translate what that actually means to us and why we should care, why we should take notice. So the first thing that I'd like to speak to is within advertising, the Spotify audience network, which has been opened up. And the Spotify audience network is something that gives us full access to audio advertising now on that Spotify platform for both podcast and music. And it's quite a bit more than that. Now, you do have all the targeting options that you basically expect nowadays from advertising platforms. You have demographics of who you want to reach. You have audience segments, like are they into fitness or are they shopping enthusiasts? And you have context, like are they maybe listening to something related to business or gaming or technology or so on. All of that is great, and audio is an awesome channel for us. Traditionally, it's been mostly just radio. Then podcast sponsorships kind of became a thing, but it's still relatively out of reach for most businesses. Now this brings it to many more businesses. The interesting thing that I'm seeing here about Spotify is that this audience network isn't just Spotify. It's not just their podcast, not just their music platform. It's something that is going to provide a ready-to-place audio ad insertion dynamically into other streaming services. So any streaming service out there can partner with Spotify, run ads from Spotify's platform into their own, and that is going to profoundly change the reach of Spotify's network. And it's something really exciting. And we've seen it on display networks by Google, by Facebook. Each of them have websites outside of their own that they can place ads through dynamically. Doing it in audio format through a company like Spotify that is well known and well known among consumers in particular is going to be something pretty profound. And we've seen Spotify invest heavily into podcasts. Obviously, they're strong into the music side of things as well. And that is something that can be pretty huge for the audio-driven advertising world. So I'm really excited to see where that goes. I think it's a big move forward and something that we need to pay attention to. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity to use that advertising platform. The next thing is the Snapchat Partners program and the expansions there. And so there's two new labels that you're going to see. And one is strategic partners, which includes technology agencies, anyone who's helping to forward the utilization of Snapchat's advertising platform, strategic partners, and the technology service providers, the softwares, and these are not relatively new designations or a new path for companies like Snapchat. But seeing Snapchat double down on having these marketing partners is really great to see, because there is still a lot of opportunity on Snapchat with a certain audience segment. And if they are doubling down on getting more partners on board, that is just a network effect for them, or like a flywheel. The more partners that they have on their platform that can help other companies get on their platform, the more valuable the advertising platform becomes. And so they know this, that's why they're doing it. But it is something that is notable to see, because we're used to talking about Facebook and Instagram advertising. We talk about Google. TikTok is a hot topic, but Snapchat is something that's been tried and true for a couple of years. The advertising side hasn't been so strong. It's obviously an awareness-based as opposed to lead generation, sale-based kind of platform, but there is something there, and I think it's something else that you want to pay attention to. And with any of these things that are not the norm necessarily, of testing out Spotify ads or testing out Snapchat ads, I think it's good to have 5 to 10% of your marketing budget dedicated to testing the waters in different places, because you'll learn, you'll stay on the cutting edge, and you might tap into something that actually works tremendously well for you. And the next thing on the advertising side is with YouTube. And they recently were accredited by the Media Rating Council, which is big for YouTube because it's the one and only place like YouTube, or platform like YouTube, that provides advertising that received this accreditation, the recognition. This comes because YouTube has been really stringent about brand safety and how they allow ads onto their platforms, what videos can be monetized and what cannot. And YouTube has caught a lot of criticism because of demonetizing videos in the past. And in recent years, these criticisms rose quite a bit. But this explains one reason why YouTube wanted to be stringent about what they allowed so that they can get this accreditation. And now those advertisers out there that have tens of millions of dollars to spend every year are a little bit more confident about going to Google, going to YouTube, putting their dollars there. This is another measure that probably raises the walls against regulations. And that's always something that Google is going to be concerned about, how much outside influence really comes into play. Google mostly runs their business operating off those ad dollars coming in. So they gain confidence from advertisers, and they build their walls and defenses to say, we are a legitimate platform. All of that works very well into their business model. And the fourth area I want to touch on in advertising is connected TV. And connected TV, again, is something that is very awareness driven, but it's a fast growing segment. And when there's so many cable cutters out there, connected TV can kind of fill that void. And if you're not familiar, connected TV is basically when someone is watching YouTube on a TV, if it's an Apple TV, Roku TV, whatever device you're using to access the YouTube app on a TV, that'll be a connected TV device. So you can target connected TV directly from the Google Ads platform. And it is something very awareness driven, because you're not going to get too many leads or sales directly through it, but there's a bunch of exposure opportunity there. With a standard for TVs today to be smart and have the capability, and YouTube being such a basic app to be built in with many TVs or easily accessible, this opens up quite a bit of opportunity. And Amazon Fire TV itself recently reached 40 million users. It's a growing field, a growing area altogether. So this is something I don't expect to slow down entirely post-pandemic. The numbers growth-wise might slow a bit, but you're going to see over time more and more that connected TV is something that we need to keep on our radar. Again, where it fits as an awareness platform, there's opportunity. Now, we do have a chat field. If you'd like to take a moment, enter anything into the chat, you're welcome to do that. I will monitor it. I'll check it at the end. But any questions, comments, any opinions that maybe are different than mine, I'd love to hear them. I'm all for the discussion and the different perspectives. Now, on another note, let's talk about digital privacy. Obviously, it overlaps with advertising quite a bit. It is something that is at the forefront of conversations today, and there's a lot of changes that have happened recently. One thing is that cookies are the thing that provided marketing as a way to connect actions with individuals to determine, is this advertising working or not? And can I reach them again? Can I retarget them with advertising because I know they visited my page, but they didn't buy? Or maybe I know they visited my page and then they did buy. Cookies are what helped us to track those types of actions and make those decisions. And this method is going away because of privacy concerns. In an effort to find a new alternative, a method of clustering large groups of people together based on similar interests has appeared to work pretty well. And so this hides individuals in a crowd. Before with cookies, it was very individual oriented. So someone said, this is the David cookie. We'll track him around and see what he's doing on the web and target him appropriately. Too much of an infringement on privacy there. So instead, David's being placed in this group of people that are very similar to David. Can't pick out him individually, but he's probably in there. And let's target this group instead. And so that browsing history is more anonymous now. And the test results so far has showed that you can expect about 95% of the conversions with this, which is still strong. It's not as good, of course. For every 100 conversions, you might lose 5. You still get 95 of them comparing the models. But this is one step in the right direction. The good thing is that these are being tested, and Google relies on advertising, again, so much in their business model, as do many of these other tech giants. So it's something that is imperative to them to continue to be useful to you as a business owner, as a marketer. On that trend, Apple set out to make apps more transparent about what data they take and use. And this is in that war between Apple and Google and other players. And it was a power move for the company Apple is far less reliant on data and advertising than its rivals. It's much more focused on the hardware that it sells. So this is something that is going starkly in contrast to the business model, and it's a pretty savvy move on Apple's part. Google has just recently started to transition some of their apps to showing these privacy labels. They're finally here with Gmail, with certain other apps. Not all of them yet. The assumption here is that Google probably delayed playing into Apple's trap here by using these privacy fields, by revealing how much data they really collect, and to avoid supporting their move, essentially. But it was a matter of time, and privacy and transparency are growing in importance, and we're starting to understand how they fit in. Tell me what you need to know, even if it's just the potential, and let me agree then, as opposed to taking information without being really clear and simple about what that information is and why. And not all too shocking, Facebook disagrees with Apple's privacy first move. Of course, it's a battle of business models here as well. But an interesting approach by Facebook is that they were so bold about it that they came out and claimed that Apple's privacy changes are hurting small business. And perhaps in ways they are. In particular, small businesses harmed after a pandemic or coming through a pandemic. So Facebook had their own campaign, Good Ideas Deserve to be Found. And that was presented as a way to promote Apple's changes harming small business. With this privacy focus, small business can't be so effective at advertising. They can't track as much to determine what's working, and that's harming them. And of course, this is something where they also reiterated, Facebook, that they will support small business long term. And this is one effort towards that, to standing up for small business. So, the key thing there is targeting is changing. They are testing different ways. You're going to see Apple battling with Google and Facebook, who rely on data and advertising more, but there's a lot of movement to see there. So it's something that you need to pay attention to, because tracking methods are vital to figure out what's working, and there's going to be a lot of movement in the year ahead as far as that goes. So let's transition to talking about social media. So the head of Instagram Adam Mosseri, shared that there could be an Instagram Kids released, and that's on the way, it seems. There's tremendous pressure today around the rising use of social media and parenting, mental health, safety, and Facebook did this with Messenger. They created Messenger Kids. Google did this with YouTube, creating YouTube Kids. Having these platforms that children are going to join. They're going to join any social media platform they can. They want to join. They want to do this from a very young age. So, it takes maybe just a friend or two to join Instagram for others to start to build onto that. To combat this, I think it's a great idea to create these platforms that can be more of a protected place in the digital world. And it's going to work to some degree, but we can see what Messenger Kids did. They have it void of advertising. And it's a place where you have to be a kid to be on that platform, right? And that's what you can expect from Instagram. The question I'm thinking of is, I don't think that you can advertise on Instagram Kids when that eventually comes, but will a brand profile be allowed? Will Legos be able to have a platform there? Is there certain qualifying criteria for a brand to be on that platform or not? And it's likely that they'll just cut them out altogether, but it's something that we may want to pay attention to and see how they handle it. We know children, can help open their parents' wallets. I would hope that that's not a field that they tap into, but we'll see how Instagram handles things. And Facebook, again, in the news. And I would say as social media giants continue to jockey for a position with consumers and regulators, we're going to see some challenges across the board with every party. And earlier this year, there was a pause in news being shared, which was sparked by Australia's desire to regulate Facebook and their government and the company going back and forth. And Facebook essentially made this move to resist, saying, hey, if you want to regulate what we can say and who's responsible, we're just not going to allow news to be shared at all. And this isn't necessarily a new phenomenon, but it's something that we're going to see in full force in the years ahead. Just looking at the political tensions in the United States, the claims of Russian bots and all of the different things going on, Apple's privacy changes and their moves that we just talked about, and the growing influence of social tech monoliths that have so much power, so much influence. It's really a combination of these factors that are going to really change how businesses compete and operate and how they share that field of influence with regulators. Things are probably going to get a bit messy before they get cleaned up and cleared up, but there's likely to be a lot of movement there for us to pay attention to. And on another note with social media, if you haven't heard, Clubhouse is out there and it's a strong app. It's an app that's based on it's a social media app that's voice-based, really, and it's exploded in popularity recently. And I would say it remains to be seen whether the app is here to stay. There's no Android version yet, which cuts a chunk of the market out, but you can probably expect that this year, so that'll be telling of where it goes. It wouldn't be surprising to see Facebook come out with a direct competitor. I know Twitter actually announced that they have something coming out, I believe Twitter Spaces, but something that is like Clubhouse, but a little bit more accessible. Clubhouse has used an exclusive style, being invitation only, to grow very effectively, really. And if you want to be a member, not only do you have to be an iOS user, because not an Android, but you need to be invited. And that's worked very well with different businesses. We don't see it as much with apps, but here, the growth is tremendous. So the opportunity there is very interesting. Might be enough for it to sustain, regardless of if Twitter or another platform tries to enter the space. We saw this with Snapchat after Instagram copied what they were doing, essentially, and they continued. And likewise with TikTok, I would say it's still here and pretty strong. Instagram Reels came out in a similar kind of fashion, but they've continued as well. So whether or not Clubhouse can sustain, we'll have to see. There's been a lot of controversy on the platform and what it allowed on the platform and different groups and different different issues that have been experienced. But so far, Clubhouse continues. We'll see when other competitors come out and what long term that might look like. So, concluding on social media and the changes there, it really comes down to some of the bigger players making bigger moves where they're trying to come out with sub products like Instagram Kids. They are competing with governments and how that might affect consumers. And there's always something new coming out that the big players might copy, and the smaller players may or may not become big players themselves. So moving on to more of the advanced technologies, now we're talking more about not just what is emerging that we might tap into in marketing, but what is emerging that's going to affect consumer behavior. And how does that effect play into our hand as marketers? And this is something that we might pay attention to today, and it probably would change our plans a year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years from now. So it isn't a kind of talk where you're going to come out with tactics to use tomorrow, but it's going to make you more savvy of what you need to pay attention to, because marketing is ultimately about human behavior and human psychology. So the first thing here is with what Google is doing with Google Maps. Now, augmented reality became familiar to us mostly through Snapchat filters and similar apps that provided that kind of experience. The next phase of augmented reality growth may come from travel and accommodation features. So when you're indoors, you'll be able to hold your phone up and see directional signals to say which way for you to go. How do you navigate indoors? In some places, you can do this outdoors already as well. And Google is doing that right now with airport terminals and those kind of public transport locations. And it's in select markets, but it's going to expand over time as things go. And augmented reality had been just about fun and filters on Snapchat and Instagram, but in time it's going to be a way to make life easier. And eventually that will lead to just being a way of shopping, just for a way to have an experience and a way to interact with businesses. So, this is going to be a big step forward to be, all right, it's not just about these goofy little things that we do with augmented reality, which we don't even think of as that, we just think of filters, but it's going to be a way of our life, a way of being. And similarly, in terms of augmenting behaviors, Google is coming out with another product or feature for their assistant called Memory, which is going to be essentially a way to pull up any information that we might have stored, be our second brain, whether that's websites or recipes or restaurants or where we hid our keys or a secret lock combination that we have. So where does this relate to marketing, right? It's another marker to show where assistants are going to continually be developed and to push for that integration in our day-to-day lives. And whether that be Google's assistant or Alexa or whatever that might be, the memory feature may or may not change our marketing, but knowing that we need to adapt to assistants is something that's relevant. And that means SEO, search engine optimization, adapted for voice searching and adapted for that voice search by an assistant. And right now that means aligning to natural language patterns. So we're not just worried about what is someone going to type in, but what are they going to say when they ask a question. We're worrying about creating a simple FAQ that the assistant can read and say, this is answering exactly what this person just asked, so let's display that. Having fast and mobile-ready websites, because that's always going to be more and more important over time as mobile becomes the default go-to method. Having a strong, clear, completely filled out Google My Business listing. So your business has the hours, the services offered, a menu if you're a restaurant, whatever. All of that information is filled out fully. And ultimately focusing on long tail searches. We'll talk about this more, but that means using more words in the searches that you target on your website to relate to what someone might search on Google. And not just in the natural language tone, but what is the specificity that someone might search for that you can then compete for? The more specific you are, the easier it is going to be to compete, the more effective it will be long term. And that is just a natural change in how we're going to see things operating long term. And it's something that will help any business. I mean, if you want to search restaurants near me, okay, if you want to compete for that search term. But if you are an Italian restaurant, then Italian restaurants near me is going to be something you can compete for better and get a better response for it because the searcher is also more specific. And if it's fine Italian versus Italian deli, even more specific is even better. So these are all things that you need to think about. How is augmented reality going to change into becoming a day-to-day activity? And how will that change my business long term? Something really just to pay attention to and have in your mind, not that you're going to work it into your marketing plans today necessarily. And likewise, how do I adapt for voice? This is something that is going to be more present right now in your plans. And with SEO specifically, how do I answer the common questions? What are those common questions? How do I adapt my Google My Business listing to be fully completed, filled out, ready to be pulled up by a search assistant? Now let's pull it into consumer behavior. Now, attitudes seem to be getting stronger as, in general, we gain confidence about our own finances and the economy at large. And this is a huge positive indicator for all of us. The economy is largely influenced by outlook. So, aside from reality, there's how do we feel about the economy? And recently, there's been tremendous gains domestically and globally in our confidence on personal finances and the economy at large. So this is great for us as marketers and everyone in society, as long as there's the proper safety lens put on everything. The optimism is a huge benefit in general. Also, data and analytics are becoming more and more of a core function of all businesses. And this is great. Data science and artificial intelligence might be more advanced fields for larger businesses, not so much for the small business. But the overall trend of data is at least helpful because everyone is becoming more in tune and more familiar and aware of what tools are out there, even as simple as Google Analytics, how to track results and what results matter. And that is something that is a core tenet that I've always spoken to about marketing. How much can we track it and do we know what's actually coming out of it? Now, as everyone gets more tuned into it, the standard baseline level of competency is only going to rise. The median ability is going to rise as well, and this is all the better for everyone. And on that note, as far as changes in businesses today, there's a difference of how we communicate as well that needs to be noticed, and that is with messaging and chat. And it's really just a good business practice today to provide these channels, to provide these avenues. And it's two-way communication, and it's one-to-one in that regard, where potential customers, they can reach out to you in a way that is comfortable and familiar to them, and that is simply easier than maybe picking up the phone. And it might not be as direct a path for you in your business today, and you could just answer emails, you could pick up the phone, have people call in, but you're missing out on a huge chunk of the market who wants to message and to chat. And there's a bunch of different ways you can tackle this. There's live chat bots that can handle some of the pre-qualification for you if you have a large influx. And there's ways to implement messaging directly on your Google My Business profile, directly on your website, free and cheap ways. So lots of opportunities, but you do want to pay attention to, am I offering this two-way channel? And how am I doing that? How simple do I make that? And that is a quick and simple way for you to open up new lines of communication. Next, Gen Z and how that is impacting SEO. And Gen Z is anyone who was born 97 or more recently. And these are people who grew up using search naturally. I mean, by the time they were 13 years old, a teenager, they were already very much familiar with modern day technology and social platforms and Google. And they probably shortly after, if they didn't already, had cell phones and had internet on those cell phones. And so this is someone who is just more or less a mobile heavy user. They're probably searching from their mobile device. They might be using that voice search as well. And This is someone who is very adept at using search, and they know how to search. And knowing how to search means using long tail searches because they know being more specific matters. Being more specific gets a better result for what they're searching for. So adapting your search to Gen Z is making sure your website on mobile is fast, it's easy to navigate, it's easy to view and find the right information, and that your SEO strategy generally focuses on those long tail searches. That's a smart SEO strategy in general for most businesses, I would say almost all, but even more so if you're focused on this Gen Z audience where they um, they're used to using long tail searches. And this could be someone 18 to 24 years old right now, which is scary for me to think about. 97 till now, they're already 24 or nearing it. But this is a real force in our market. So it's someone to pay attention to and to adapt to. So that's that on consumer behavior. Good outlook going forward. Data and analytics are at the forefront of everyone's mind. So the average competency is growing, which is great. Two-way communication channels through chat and messaging are becoming second nature. So it's something you should adapt to. And paying attention to that Gen Z and how they search online. Now, let's talk about diversity, inclusion, and the world of marketing. Now, I found this statistic that more than half of people don't feel represented in advertising today. And people want to see more diversity in advertising. And beyond that, it's fine if you want to appease people and if you feel like it's politically correct, whatever your reasons are, all valid, that's fine. Let's talk to just those who are financially minded, performance minded. And if you're that analytical, how do you think about this? Research have found that ads with more diverse representation have a higher ad recall. And this is interesting. Ad recall is how memorable an advertisement is to an audience. How likely am I to remember it later on? And this isn't just good for society, that means, but it's good for business as well. Higher ad recall means it's more likely that that ad resonated, that they're likely to connect with that ad, and they're likely to buy or interact or engage or whatever that is, that action is. So whatever drives you, if it's a balance of different things, or if you just look at pure performance and that's it, hopefully it's a little bit of both. There's good reason to be more conscious of diversity and representation in ads and accommodating that. It's simply going to work out for you long term. So, what you need to leave with today is a couple of key pieces of information. So in advertising, Spotify and Snapchat were opening doors, as platforms should, but there could be some interesting movements there. YouTube is proving to be a strong force for Google with connected TV growth and accreditations. On digital privacy, continuing to be a hot topic, and major players are jockeying for position. We're in a state of change, but not exactly certain of where we'll land. On social media, Facebook remains brash and yet somehow keeps Instagram innovative and adapting. It copies quite a bit, so we might see if their next adaptation is Clubhouse, but we know that Instagram Kids is on the way and that we probably want to pay attention to Clubhouse and what happens around there. On emerging technologies, with augmented in particular and assistance, advanced technologies like this might not be directly related to marketing, but they are directly related to consumer behavior and how that's changing, and they will get to marketing eventually. So just pay attention to what's going on here and start to try to predict where that might change consumer behavior for your customers. And that just gets you more in tune with human behavior and what you need to think about. On consumer behavior, people have a confident outlook on the economy and their own finances, and that's all great. Businesses are becoming more savvy to data and analytics and how important it is. Brands need to understand how customers think and act and search for information, and that's through voice and precise searching and chat and messaging. And on diversity, inclusion, and marketing, it's important to many that marketing is more representative of actual markets, and the data supports that this is a savvy business decision as well, just on a performance basis. Diversity in advertising results in better performing advertising, which should lead the way to a better world and better marketing world. So that is what we're looking at as far as Q1 2021. I'm going to do the same type of report in Q2 2021. So we're a couple months out from that. In the meantime, if you want to stay connected, you can join my newsletter at davidbradleymba.com/newsletter. I deliver that once a month on the first of our month. You get some actionable tips and advice and insights, a marketing or business framework that I'll share with you, the latest book that I read and recommend, and more. And you'll be notified when something like this comes up again. And you can also look at our marketing education programs at thebbg.com. I have programs for teaching you how to run a marketing services business, whether you want to be a consultant or an agency, how you do that effectively, and how you do that in a profitable way going forward. And no overnight get rich quick scheme kind of nature in that. Being realistic about what to expect, but how you can do things in the right way that you quickly can get your feet on the ground and start building a real business. And we also have programs as far as marketing strategy, how you develop a marketing strategy for a small business. We have one on Udemy right now that you can access, and a second one that's coming out soon as well that is a little bit more focused on the digital sales funnel framework and a little bit more in depth. But both of those will be great if you're a small business trying to move forward. And again, just sharing this last slide here. I didn't realize it didn't show originally, but those are the links if you want to follow along, gain any more information, see what's next. And I will keep you updated about any future webinars as well. I appreciate you guys joining today. And again, you'll be notified about the next one. I'll keep you updated. You might receive my newsletter if you're already on it. If not, go to davidbradleymba.com/newsletter. You can join that. And otherwise, I appreciate you joining today.